Hi, Zara Recaps here. Today I am going to explain an action thriller movie title, Last Passenger. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie begins inside a local train which is headed from London to Tunbridge. Hundreds of passengers are seen on board, and among them is our protagonist, Lewis Shaler. A doctor by profession, he is presently heading home with his young son, Max. It is disclosed that Shaler's spouse passed away years ago, so he takes his son wherever he goes. Later, when he vacates his seat to respond to a call, Max is approached by a fellow traveler named Sarah. Her seat is right next to theirs, so she tries to have a small chat with the boy. But Max, being the clumsy child that he is, accidentally knocks over her takeaway coffee cup. This causes Sarah's coat to be soaked in coffee, and Shaler promptly arrives at the scene. He admonishes his son and apologizes to Sarah for the inconvenience. He even offers to compensate for the damages, but she graciously declines, saying it's okay. The two then converse and discuss various topics. When Sarah learns that Shaler is a physician, she is genuinely impressed. She continues smiling at him and even interacts with his child. It is clear that she has taken a liking to him at first sight. After a while, Sarah becomes occupied with her phone while Shaler begins reading a newspaper. Max, as usual, plays with his toy dinosaur and explores the area. When he turns around, he notices a rough-looking passenger named January. The man shows him a magic trick using a cigarette, but then frightens him with a terrifying expression. Shortly after, the train conductor appears to inspect the ticket. Jan is casually smoking a cigarette inside the compartment, so he is instructed to put it away. But he declines and starts making a scene. This enrages some fellow passengers, and an elderly man named Peter even confronts him. Jan, who is obviously intoxicated, tries to intimidate the man by demonstrating some feeble kung fu move. But when Peter doesn't back down, he reluctantly puts away his cigarette and moves to the corridor section. The scene then shifts to an hour later, and we observe that only a few passengers are left on the train. Shaler's attention is drawn by an unusual-looking man who is carrying a motorcycle helmet. When the train halts at a station, he apparently exits. However, he soon comes back, consumes a can of beer, and enters another compartment. Shaler gazes at the man for a moment but doesn't think much of it. Meanwhile, the conductor has completed checking all the tickets and is heading back to his room. But as soon as he arrives there, he's dragged inside by a shadowy figure. Meanwhile, Max has finally fallen asleep, giving Sarah the opportunity to converse with Shaler. She wastes no time and begins flirting with him, even indicating that she's unattached. The inexperienced doctor hesitates to come up with replies, as he is quite nervous. But Sarah insists that he must purchase her a new coat, as this one has been ruined by his son. She then writes her number on a piece of paper and gives it to him. Shaler gladly accepts it and smiles at her, indicating his interest in Sarah. Several stations later, the train is nearly empty except for a few passengers. Shaler wakes up from a brief nap and notices that the train is still. He hears a hissing noise from outside, followed by an unfamiliar man fleeing. Then, a loud crash is heard and the train resumes moving. Shaler approaches the window and attempts to observe the situation. To his complete surprise, he sees an injured man crawling along the track. Shaler immediately heads to the conductor's room to report the issue. Being a physician himself, he cannot tolerate seeing others in distress. But even after knocking on the door multiple times, the conductor doesn't reply. Hearing the commotion, a gentleman appears from the VIP section, and he's none other than Peter. He cautions Shaler not to knock on that door as it could lead to severe penalty. The latter explains that they need to urgently assist an injured man who's crawling on the track, but Peter doesn't believe they can help. He merely returns to his room and shuts the door. A while later, the train finally arrives at Tunbridge, and both Sarah and Shaler get ready to disembark. As they say their goodbye, she reminds him to call her and then gives him a kiss. Shaler is left speechless by the kiss, but he becomes even more astonished when the train doesn't stop at Tunbridge. It keeps moving at a normal speed without even slowing down. Concerned that something's amiss, Shaler proceeds to investigate while Sarah and Max join an elderly woman named Elaine. In the next scene, Shaler arrives outside the driver's room, which is barricaded by a metal door. Since he can't get in, he presses the intercom and says he needs to go home urgently. For the first few moments, no one responds, but then a man asks how many passengers are left. Shaler is stunned by the response, as he was hoping the driver would ask about his emergency. But nonetheless, he counts the remaining passengers and replies that there are 6 of them. As soon as the driver hears, he closes the intercom and increases the train's speed. Shaler tries contacting him repeatedly, but to no avail. Following, he heads to the conductor's office for answers. This time, he enters an adjacent room where he finds the door open. He also discovers the conductor's equipment and other belongings on the floor. This makes Shaler really anxious as he realizes that something's wrong. Soon after, Peter shows up and inquires about the situation. Shaler informs him that the train hasn't stopped and is instead moving at a faster speed. At first, Peter doesn't believe him and merely asks him to return to his seat. But when the train doesn't stop at his station either, he starts panicking. The two men then begin pulling all the emergency brakes one after another, but none of them are able to decelerate the train even slightly. Shaler then checks the train statistics and shockingly discovers that the brakes have no air pressure in them. This is why the emergency brakes are not functioning at the moment. Soon, the thug from earlier, Jan, also joins them. He asks what's happening, and Shaler explains that about an hour ago, when the train was still, he heard a hissing sound, followed by a man running away. Peter, who is knowledgeable about mechanics, quickly realizes that someone released the air to disable the brake. This sets everyone in a panic, and they start thinking of ways to halt the train. Shaler knows that every train has two control rooms, one at the front and the other at the rear. Since the front one is occupied by the mysterious driver, they go to the other one. The door is fortunately unlocked, and they immediately start searching for a possible solution. At this moment, Peter once again appears and tries to stop. He says that he has already contacted the authorities, so they should just wait rather than tampering with these dangerous controls. He hopes that the police will cut the power to this train, which will allow them to gradually come to a stop. However, Shaler reveals that this is a diesel train, so there is no way someone from outside can halt. This only means one thing: their fate is in their own hands now. The entire group then continues searching until they find a handbrake. Typically, these brakes are used when a train is stationary to prevent it from rolling. However, lacking other options, they decide to pull it. Shaler and Jan take the lead and pull the lever with all their strength. The plan initially succeeds, and the train starts decelerating. But then the driver notices this and increases the speed, thwarting their effort. Later, as the group is trying to find other solutions, the train collides with a car at a level cross, instantly killing all its occupants. This frightens the elderly woman, Elaine, so much that she suffers a cardiac arrest. Shaler swiftly springs into action and begins performing chest compression. He also attempts various other methods to revive her, but to no avail. The poor woman passes away on the spot, leaving everyone heartbroken. However, the group has no time to mourn, as they need to stop the train immediately. Jan suggests they break open the control room's door, to which Shaler agrees. The two men then grab weapons and start pounding on the thick door. Fortunately, Shaler manages to shatter the glass and climbs inside. Upon reaching the other side, he is left in complete shock. He discovers the conductor's lifeless body, confirming his suspicion that the train has been hijacked. Now, the only barrier between him and the driver is another metal door. Shaler uses a blunt object and pounds at the door repeatedly, but it is too strong to be broken. To make matters worse, the driver sounds a blaring horn, forcing everyone to retreat back to their compartment. As they plan their next move, Peter reveals that decades ago, a similar incident occurred. Someone hijacked a train and drove it into a wall, killing many passengers. He fears that the mysterious driver is planning to do something similar. The group theorizes that at this speed, they will reach the last station in about 30 minutes. This means they must act quickly, or they will all perish. With time running out, Jan proposes heading outside to uncouple the carriage. It is a dangerous mission, as any mistake at this speed could be fatal, but it's their only opportunity, so he is willing to attempt it. The rest of the group wishes him good fortune, and Shaler opens the door. Jan slowly steps outside into the frigid weather and begins work. However, due to the slippery surface, he slips, causing him to hang on for dear life. Fortunately, before he can fall to his death, Shaler grabs his hand and somehow pulls him back to safety. Now, the group has roughly 10 minutes before the train reaches its final station. Shaler, willing to risk everything, comes up with a bold idea. He plans to use a fire extinguisher to blow up the floor panel, which will allow them to detach the carriages from inside. After piling up the supplies, Shaler instructs Sarah and Max to move to the other side, as it will be safer there. He then ignites the improvised bomb, and it soon explodes. The plan fortunately works, and the floor panels are destroyed. Shaler wastes no time and tries to uncouple the carriages manually, but the surface is too hot due to the fire. At this intense moment, Peter arrives with a lever. Shaler then moves to the other side, and the two men use all their strength to unscrew the bolt. They eventually manage to do it, and the carriages separate, but Peter loses his balance and falls to his death. Witnessing this, Shaler is devastated, but he's in a tough spot himself, as the fire prevents him from getting to the other side. With the carriages slowly drifting apart, he instructs Jan to pull the handbrake. The latter obliges, and he immediately rushes to the control room where Max and Sarah are present. The adults then pull the handbrake with all their might, and the train finally comes to a stop. On the other hand, Shaler is still not out of danger, as his carriage is being engulfed by flame. With no options left, he becomes even more worried when he realizes that he's covered in kerosene. Shaler prays to God and jumps out of the moving compartment. In the final scene, we see the entire group by Shaler's side on the track. He is severely injured, but he's going to survive. The movie ends as the police finally arrive to assist.